I will tell you something about secret spots. So I know that there's a lot of
So welcome to the Kayak Bass Connection podcast. I'm your host, Jared. If you're listening to this podcast, I know you're probably a passionate angler. So know that our sport fishing in Illinois especially would not be possible without the good folks that spend their time managing and protecting all those natural resources that we love. So tonight is our podcast is dedicated to hearing the perspective of one of our Illinois Department of Natural Resources biologists. So let me introduce everyone real quick. First of all, our special guest, Mr. Shawn Hurst. Shawn, thank you very much, not only for the work that you do as a biologist with the state of Illinois, but for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
We're also joined by Austin Wiedenhunter. So Widehunter, I'm sorry.
You got it.
So Austin is an awesome kayak tournament angler who has taken a lot of my money in sick tournaments. He's also a fantastic wildlife photographer. But thank you for joining us tonight, Austin. And
Absolutely.
then
Happy to
last
be
but
here.
certainly not least, my co-host tonight is a young man that's quickly making a name for himself in the Southern Illinois Kayak Club and some other angling or kayak angling events. Caden Cox. Caden, welcome.
How's it going?
So, Shawn, you're the host of the hour here. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about your history, how long you've been with the IDNR?
I'm finishing up my 29th year with the state of Illinois. Out of school, I worked about 3 years in South Georgia. Transferred up here in the mid-90s. I was in the Havana area for a couple of years and then moved to my current position in, I believe it was like March of 98. And I've been working on these same lakes since late last century. Kind of sounds weird to say that, but that's when I started working on them.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what currently, I know you are a fisheries biologist, but what does day to day look like for you?
In the wintertime, we're doing a lot of fish attractor work. We're also entering data, writing up reports based on our surveys. Surveying typically is spring, summer, and fall. In the wintertime, the fish go offshore, go deeper, and they're not susceptible to our typical sampling techniques. So it's a slower time in terms of fish sampling, but I like to be on the water, so I'm doing as much fish attractor work and that type of thing as I can in this time of year. This morning I was working on building some, we call them Shelbyville cubes. The ones I was working on this morning will be for Rend Lake. We're hoping to put some of those out next week if the weather looks good next week. The Corps was working with a local angler to get some coordinates, good spots to put them in. So whenever we drop those types of things, the coordinates are posted and updated, and everybody will know where they're at.
That's awesome. So I'll post, you sent me some photos of what those look like. So I'll make sure I post those in the podcast here as we're talking and post editing. But yeah, that's fantastic.
Cool.
So are you one of the most senior biologists then working in the state, Shawn? That's quite a history.
I'm getting pretty long in the tooth. So there's a couple gentlemen that have been around a little bit longer than me. One of them just retired in December. But yeah, I'm getting up there in terms of seniority anyway.
What general area of the state do you operate in then?
I'm based in Southern Illinois. I cover Rend Lake and also Jackson County. So any water body, inland lake, pond in Jackson County.
Okay.
So if somebody calls with a pond question, there's fish kills, anything like that for Jackson County, I cover that. But my main job title is like the Rend Lake Reservoirs fish biologist.
Caden or Austin, have any one of you ever fished that lake before?
I have not. I'm not for sure. I think I've only fished one or two of the lakes on this year's schedule. So I'm kind of curious. What's the layout of that lake like, Shawn?
It's about 19,000 acres, real shallow. It's a impoundment of the Big Muddy River. So you're not going to have the clarity. You're going to have very, very little aquatic vegetation. And it's It's a big crappie fishery. It's got okay bass. The bass is dependent on high water in the spring. The Rend Corps of Engineers has no control over the water level over there. So if we have high water and it stays high in the spring, we get a good bass spawn. If the water doesn't come up, or if it comes up and then drops real quick, it really affects the bass reproduction over there. And so that's something that we struggle with. It's an older lake that really lacks habitat. And so that's always been a struggle. As these lakes get older and older, they have less and less habitat in them because anything that was left in them is breaking down constantly.
That's awesome. I hadn't fished Rend Lake either. It's one of the larger lakes in Illinois, correct?
It is. I think it's maybe the second largest. Of the right one. Yeah. Yep. There's three main Corps of Engineers reservoirs. You've got Lake Shelbyville, you got Carlisle Lake, and then you have Rend Lake.
Yep. Awesome.
But looking at your schedule, you picked some really good lakes. Kincaid has a fantastic bass fishery right now. Cedar is probably the best lake in southern Illinois other than Newton in terms of bass fishing. And I had looked at the schedule the other night just out of curiosity and saw all three of those lakes were on your list to fish, and you've picked some good bass fishing lakes for kayak tournaments for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're between those. I mean, Kincaid, Cedar, and Newton. I mean, those are just fantastic in my mind. I have to tell you, Cedar's probably my favorite, though.
Historically, we haven't typically had like the best tournaments on Kincaid, but I've fished Kincaid a lot outside of tournaments, particularly up near the Paul Ice area. And now I haven't particularly caught a lot of largemouth, but I've caught a large amount of quality largemouth in Kincaid, and it's just a beautiful lake too. Now there's a lot of boat traffic, especially in the summer. It's a very large lake, but that Paul Ice area, if there's somewhere you want to get out quick, there's a bunch of grass and it's clean water, and it's a pretty fun area up there too.
Now, Shawn, you talked about having all these different interactions with you mentioned local angler was kind of helping you place some of your structures. What other type of interactions do you usually have with anglers that frequent the lakes and the ponds you're responsible for? Do you take a lot of information from anglers, or?
I try to, because a lot of times, like say Cedar Lake, we sample it every year, but it's 2 or 3 days in the spring, and that's what we base our management recommendations on. Now we'll see, 500 to 1,000 bass in those couple of days, but I can only tell people what we see when we're sampling, but I like to know what people are catching when they're actually fishing. So I try to pick their brains when I'm out there, see how they're doing, what they're catching, the shape of the fish. One problem we have at Cedar, it's very rare for a public lake. We have a couple lakes in southern Illinois, too many bass. We need to thin out the small bass, and I can't get anyone to keep the small bass at Cedar Lake. 99% of the people I've talked to say they have not and they will not keep a bass out of the lake.
Wow.
And,
so when you say small
clarify,
bass,
we want them to keep the small fish.
Okay.
So we have.
What would you consider small?
At Cedar Lake, it's the same at Kincaid. We see it at both. The bass are real slow growing and almost skinny until they get to about 14 inches. And then once they get to 14 inches, they just take off and they swell up like a football. My theory is their mouth's big enough at that point where they can eat multiple year classes of shad and other forage fish, and they just take off. That's the reason we have that slot limit at Cedar, is once they get to 14 inches, they just take off and they're just going to keep getting bigger. But we need people to keep their smaller fish, thin them out, and allow them to grow faster. Not only will they reach 14 inches quicker, but there'll be more food for those slot and bigger fish if we get rid of some of the smaller fish that are in that lake.
And so on that topic, you said that they are big enough to eat multiple types or years of shad. So is that the main forage at Cedar? I've never fished there. I mean, do they pick off bluegill? Is it a shad lake?
They'll eat anything they can find. but like any predator, they're opportunistic, and there's more shad than anything else out there. The problem can be the shad. The shad can grow pretty quick and get to a large enough size that a 12-inch bass can't eat them, or a younger bass can't eat them. Where a largemouth can eat a shad that's almost a third its body length. Now it can only eat a bluegill about a quarter of its body length if you think about the body shape and the spines on a bluegill. But shad's the main forage base.
Yep.
There's also multiple sunfish species in the lake that they'll eat, and there's also another fish called a spotted sucker that are pretty susceptible to bass. They're long, slender, and spineless. And we see quite a few golden shiners also when we're doing our samples.
Golden shiners. Oh. Now, when you've mentioned that a few times, your samples, is that electrofishing? Is that what you call it?
For when we're doing a bass sample, and also we get information on crappie, bluegill, pretty much everything general is a electrofishing sample, and that really only works in shallow water. Yeah. So you'll always see us kind of either in the spring or the fall going along the edge of the lake. If you go out in the open water and do it, it's not effective. One, the fish can just, if they're too deep, it won't work. Or if you don't almost trap them against the shoreline, they'll just swim away from it. Now, one thing we may try is now that we've hired a few more people, we're looking at getting some nets. I might do a fall crappie survey on Cedar, which we've never done before. But that remains to be seen if we're able to get a net boat with some nets. And if we have that this fall, we may try to do a crappie specific survey in the fall.
Okay. So that was going to be one of my next questions, actually. How, as far as your resources, equipment, and personnel to do something like that, I bet that is probably a pretty significant undertaking, or is it just 2 or 3 people?
Well, it's typically 1 to 2 boats, and you got to have somebody driving and somebody netting. Mm-hmm. So it's at least a 2-person. The bonus with that is, although I'm responsible for and manage the waters in Jackson County and Rend Lake, I get to go do the surveys and observe the fish at Crab Orchard Refuge, at Newton Lake, at East Fork Lake, at Forbes Lake. I get to see a whole bunch of the lakes all throughout the state, but I typically won't answer questions about them because I refer them to the biologist for those. If they're general questions, I'll ask, but if there's any, why is this or why is that, I'm going to let you talk to the biologist that's in charge of that particular lake. But it's fun to see the different waters.
And I have different waters. And I literally have a Post-it note right here with those guys' names and phone numbers on it.
Yep.
So we're going to hopefully get to talk to a few of those folks as well. So what is unique about Cedar that you don't see in some of the other lakes?
Cedar is probably one of the largest lakes in the state that has the 10 horsepower limit. I get questions on that all the time. That's a City of Carbondale ordinance. It has nothing to do with DNR. However, if they were to ask me my opinion on it, I would tell them I think we should stick with that, because one of the major problems at Cedar is we just don't have enough parking. You get on a Saturday at the Pomona ramp or the City of Carbondale ramp, there may not be a place to park. It's that popular. There's a lot of recreational, non-angling kayak traffic down there because it's a beautiful lake. So that's one thing that's really unique. The other thing is it's one of the only inland lakes in the state where you can catch pure striped bass. And we've got a couple of really nice year classes of striped bass in the lake right now.
No kidding. So why is it that were they stocked and they're just reproducing, or
they do not reproduce?
Are they not reproducing?
They were stocked historically. They've always done well, but it's a problem to find a source of them. You can't really hold adult striped bass in a hatchery situations. So the fish have to be caught in the wild at the right egg stage, stripped of their eggs, fertilized, and that type of thing. I think the majority of the stripers that are produced probably start in South Carolina, and they're sent out as fingerlings around the country to the different hatcheries. We used to try to collect some out of Sangchris Lake and take them up to Jake Wolf Fish Hatchery, but it's just really hard to find the fish. They're an open water fish, and they're just hard. They don't, when we're shocking the lake, like I've seen 3 shocking in my 29 years there. and I've caught as many as 20 in a day fishing.
Wow.
So they're there, they're just in the open water, and they're not susceptible to shocking.
Yeah. So is the Sangchris fish, they also purebred, or are they a hybrid?
They're a pure striped bass, but that hasn't been stocked probably since maybe 2015. I've been fortunate that I found a source in Arkansas, but it's really hit or miss. They get fingerlings, they put them in a pond, they drain the pond in the fall, and they're there, they're not there. And there was 4 or 5 years in a row it was a complete bust. One of the federal hatcheries got into raising some fish, and we got 2 really good stockings from them. That was also in Arkansas. And so that's the fish that we have out there right now. They were from 2020 from Mammoth National Fish Hatchery in Arkansas. And they're about, I'd say, 19 to 24 inches right now in the lake. We've also started tagging some. So if you happen to catch one, look at the dorsal fin and see if we call it a Floyd tag. It's about the diameter of a piece of spaghetti. Be about 3 inches long. It'll have a 5-digit number on one side, and it'll have my phone number on the other side. If you're not keeping the fish to eat, try to get that tag number. Call me and just let me know the date. If you can get a length on the fish, that would be great. Try not to take the tag out if you're turning the fish loose, but I know it's hard to control, especially if you're by yourself on a kayak. It's hard to control a fish like that, to be able to look at the tag and
yeah. Now, just to clarify, those in Cedar and Sangchris have tags, or just one or the other?
No, just some of the fish we're catching in Cedar, hook and line, we're putting tags in. And so I think we have up to about 75 of them tagged right now. But if you catch one with a tag in it, you're going to see that tag for sure.
Yeah. I don't live in Southern Illinois, but I have family that lives in Carbondale, Murfreesboro. So every time I go down there, we frequent Cedar Lake, Kincaid Lake, mostly those 2. One lives 10 minutes from the boat ramp on Kincaid, and the other used to live on the road to the boat ramp at Cedar. So we fished Cedar any chance we got. And my brother-in-law particularly goes out there and targets stripers with a fly rod, and he's caught some over 10-pound stripers out there. And I can't remember the details. I haven't had the chance to go do it yet, but there's particular seasons and time frames where the only times he's been able to catch them, and then outside of those time frames, it's been really difficult.
Yeah, it's certainly hit or miss. It seems like spring is really like everything else. It really turns on in the spring. I know that there's been some people that have found some on certain days, but then they go right back and then they can't find them. They get into them one day and then they can't find them the next day. And that's the mystery of where do those fish go? The next day they're not in an area and you just don't, it's hard to find them.
Yeah. It's magical when you're sitting there and they just start boiling around you, and they can move hundreds of yards quickly. And that's the only time I've caught them is when they've come up and they've been schooling and I throw something in there and catch them. Other than that, I've always struggled to actually target and catch them, just because open water, where do you look,
Yeah. I would like to someday catch one on my kayak is a goal of mine, but I haven't been able to pull that off yet.
That'd be a sleigh ride, I think.
I think they would drag you around for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to go out and catch a Kincaid musky in Kincaid. It'd pretty much be a similar experience out of the kayak.
Yeah, and we also have some of the muskies at Kincaid have that same tag in them that I'm talking about, that the stripers in awesome. Cedar will have. So
like, since we're talking sort of about Cedar Lake a little bit, so what do you think is the main forage base that allows the bass to reach? I know you talked about the different sizes and different growth of the bass, but the bigger bass there, you talked about a lot of different things. Is there any one species of forage you think they're cluing in on to reach the size that they've reached in Cedar Lake?
I would say the gizzard shad. It's because the gizzard shad, they can be from 2 inches to 10 inches. And so you're going to have multiple year classes. They're the most abundant fish. They're a schooling fish. Now, once they get, the bass get big enough, they can eat pretty much anything that they can find. But just law of average, it's going to be a shad just from the numbers part of it.
And when you and I talked earlier today, you had mentioned the efforts you've been doing to maintain the fish habitat there in Cedar. I'm curious, Caden, Austin, I know Caden said you hadn't fished in Austin. Have you ever, did you know that habitat was there?
For shad specifically?
No, for the fish habitat that's been dropped in Cedar.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I know early on, I've been fishing Cedar since my sisters went to college there. When they were in college, I went down and fished there. And me and my dad would go down there on his John boat, little 9.9 kicker. And we bought that. And I know it was online as well, but we bought a book from Walmart that basically has all the lakes in Illinois within it. And within that book, they had marked some spots where structure had been dropped, which we used to target crappie. And, wherever you find that structure, usually there's some forage fish trying to hide in it where, predators are lurking to ambush. So, yeah, we targeted those places. I don't think it was probably not all the ones that are there now, but I haven't checked it.
By the way, we'll be linking a list of the actual GPS coordinates that the IDNR has on their website that shows you where a majority of those they're at.
And does this group get the secret spots that aren't on the map? The personal ones?
I will tell you something about secret spots. So I know that there's a lot of brush that's sunk by anglers out there. And we don't have any record of that. It's not something that's allowed, but I know it goes on all the time. So there, and with live scope, there's not a lot of secrets anymore for a lot of that stuff. But if you look at our stuff, our stuff's all artificial. Artificial's not as good. Natural wood's the best thing. Any kind of hardwood treetops, cedars, Christmas trees, that's better. But the artificial stuff works. And if we're handing out a map showing all these locations, I want to make sure something's at these locations when you go to fish there. Another thing you'll notice with our fish attractors at Cedar, they're all in about 10 to 18 foot of water. When a lot of these lakes were constructed, everything was cleared out in that deeper water, and there's no structure. So one thing, if you're on a boat, kayak, you can find shoreline structure, and in the fall and the spring, there's going to be fish on that stuff. When the water starts warming up, those fish go out to the deepest water that has oxygen, and a lot of times they're scattered because there's no habitat that deep. So we put I purposely put the structure I've sunk out in deeper water for two reasons. One, to try to improve maybe fishing in the summer and the winter when the fish are scattered. It gives them something to relate to. It provides a little bit of habitat for the forage fish. If the forage fish are hiding on it, the predator fish are going to be nearby. You also want something deep enough that no one's going to hit it on their boat. You're not really supposed to be swimming out there, but you don't want people diving on this type of stuff. Like I said, that you don't want anybody hitting them with the boat, that type of thing. So if you're wondering why all of our sets are deeper water, that's why. Now, the reason we don't go any deeper than that is that lake in the summertime stratifies, and typically there's no oxygen below between 15, 20 feet. And so we didn't want to put stuff at 25, 30 feet that the fish can't use for a good part of, a large part of the summer. The whole point was to help them congregate around some things when they move off shoreline. So you'll see kind of in all the lakes that we're doing this, there's not a lot of deep habitat, and it's not right on the shoreline. Another thing I'm working on, I'm meeting with the Forest Service next week. I'm going to try to take advantage of dead trees that are already laying along the shoreline and try to get permission from them to move that stuff out. It'll be in shallower water. It won't really be on a map because we're just going to grab what we can find. And if they do any kind of timber stand improvement around the lake, they're willing to leave that stuff or help drag it close to the shoreline where we can get it in 8-10 feet of water and drop it. The other thing, like I said, as these lakes age, everything that's fallen in is starting to decompose and won't be there. In years past, you'd have trees falling in just from shoreline erosion. if you've been down at Cedar in the last couple of years, you'll see a lot of it's in lake but close to the shoreline riprap that they've been working on it for the last couple months. They got another project.
Yes.
That's wonderful in terms of stabilizing the soil, but at the same time, that's going to stop the number of trees in the long run that are going to be falling in the lake to provide habitat. And that's another reason I'd like to try to step up some of the natural brush type things in shallower water that we do as well.
Makes a lot of sense.
That makes sense.
And
I had the pleasure to be able to go out and film some like educational content with wildlife private pond manager, lake manager. And we went out in the electric shock boat, and it was always so fun when we cruise around. He's like, all right, this spot's got current. You're about to see a bunch of bass flow up. You'd be going through a spot where, you're seeing a few fish come up, and all of a sudden you get to that spot where all the current's coming through, and then 15, 20, 4 or 5 pound largemouth just float up. Now, this was a 100-acre stocked private lake, lots of big fish in it, as well as so I guess my question is, when you guys put in all that structure, do you guys use those spots when you go to electrofish as like your prime spots when you're surveying?
It just depends. We survey the same areas year after year, so we can kind of use a comparative and look at the trends from year to year. Like you could go shock certain areas of the lake and not get a fish, or you could just, if you pick the hot spots, you might overinflate what you think's out there. So we have these historical runs at Cedar. We do 8 30-minute transects, and it's the same ones we've been doing for my whole career and even before I got here. And that lets us get a general feel for the population, if it's going up or down, stable. We're looking at numbers, body condition, that type of thing. If there's fish attractors in the run, we will definitely go to them because we want to see some fish. Because Crab Orchard is so shallow, some of the runs on Crab Orchard, we do hit some of the fish attractors because you just put it, they're in shallow water and it's susceptible to shocking. But anywhere on our run, say if there's a down tree, you're going to get a bunch of fish off that down tree. That's just where the fish are. So if somebody asks me, based on your shocking, where would you be fishing? I'm like, right where you're going to be fishing anyway, by these down trees and logs. And any type of submerged,
That makes sense.
The other thing it does too is you got to understand.
Yeah, sorry.
That's no problem. The other thing you got to understand is we're on someone's standing up on a boat. We have a motor running, although it's at idle speed, and we also have a generator running, making a bunch of noise. So those fish are hiding under that log, because they hear that or see us, but they stay there, and that helps us collect fish. Like I said, if you just do it out in the open water, you'll see some fish, but the majority of them are swimming away before you ever can get the current of the electricity to temporarily stun them to where we get to see them.
Now, do fish relate to some of the big rocks and boulders and stuff that Cedar like they do wood, or do you think it's mainly they relate to wood?
They will use that, but wood, I've not seen anything that's better than a down tree, hardwood treetop, anything like that. That's what we're seeing when we sample in the spring and the fall.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, you're talking about a lot of work that you do on behalf of managing the resource. And my question is, what can we do as anglers to help you manage the resources that you do?
One of the things is just follow the regulations. We set regulations based on our population surveys, and we set that based on the fact that we want you to be able to catch fish today, tomorrow, next week, next year, and the year after that. And so, just following the regs that are out there. At Cedar, I know I'm probably, I'm not going to get too far, but if you're out there and you like to eat fish and you catch your 5 small fish under 14 inches, please keep them and eat them. You're not causing a problem to the lake. We actually need that done at the lake. At Cedar and at Devil's Kitchen, we've got too many small bass. And like I said, there's nothing we can do to make those bass grow faster. We just can't add forage or anything like that to make them grow faster. We just need to thin them out. Very rare in a public lake to have too many bass. It's a good problem to have, but that would, like I said, it's an outstanding bass fishery. The only thing that would make it better is if we could thin out some of those under 14-inch fish. And you would never, if everyone in your group decided to go out there for the whole year and keep their 5 a day, you wouldn't put a dent in them. But we call it Smokey the Bear syndrome. We've pounded into people's head that forest fire is bad so long that when you want to go do a controlled burn, people are like, "Oh, we don't want you to burn the forest." Well, with bass fishing, we've talked about catch and release, catch and release, catch and release, and in 99% of the public lakes, that's the best thing to do. But we found when we have a lake with too many small fish, we just can't get people to keep them. And I've even talked to the crappie anglers to say, "Hey, if you catch your 5 little bass, keep them." And most of them are like, "I don't want to eat a bass," So that's one problem. That's one problem that we have.
Yeah, maybe we need to have a special tournament there that's catch, clean, and cook.
They have had
14 wonders.
When you brought that up the first time, like, that's a little sacrilegious for a tournament CPR club, but if we went out and did a, catch, clean, cook, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, after hearing this, yeah.
I've tried to spread the word, but it's like I said, it's hard to, and I've had, you go out there and you don't catch a bass one day because they're not biting, and you're like, well, I'm not keeping any bass out here. I didn't even catch one today, but they're there, trust me. And they've been there my whole career. I've been trying to get people to keep them for 29 years, and we're getting we have a pretty high percentage of fish in that 14 to 18-inch range. But it could be better, it could be better. But like I said, it's one of the best bass lakes in all of Southern Illinois.
Yeah. And the scenery just adds to it. And the fact that there's not a lot of high-speed pleasure craft out there to run you down in a kayak, is really a big draw for us, because it's a fairly peaceful lake to be fishing on. You got good numbers of big fish, and apparently a lot of small ones.
Okay, Shawn, I got a question for you. So we're fishing Cedar on June 1st, and I guess if you were in a kayak and you were fishing against all the guys in our group, what do you think you would do if for the bass setting up? Because it's not going to be late summer, and they might not be out deep. Because I've never been to Cedar. I don't know if they set up offshore like they do on points at Sangchris, or what they do. If it's like Banner and they're always up under mats. I'm not for sure. So would you flip brush in the morning? Would you stick to it all day, throw chatterbait in some shallow coves? I mean, what kind of could somebody do if they wanted to do decent?
I actually listened to a couple of the podcasts yesterday, and I wanted, it was either Brandon or Mike talked about start shallow. I think, if I'm not butchering the names or anything, I would start shallow, because it would be temperature dependent. June 1, it could be 60 degrees, it could be 105. And also, we don't know what the water temps are. I would do shallow water structure and then start moving off from there if you're not catching anything. That would be my suggestion. Now, let me also tell you, I'm a horrific largemouth bass angler. With fishing with electricity, I can outfish any of you guys. But hook and line, I have trouble catching largemouth out there. I do okay at crappie. I've caught some stripers. I've gone cat fishing. I'm not good at the bass part, but I can tell you where I think they'll be. But it's up to you to figure out the baits and that type of thing. But I always shallow structure until they're proven that they've moved off. And there's a lot of nice drop-off points out there. And also, the creek bed is pretty easy to find if you have a depth finder, and so it's the classic. I'd start on structure and then start looking for drop-offs and that type of thing.
The questions that are one of our members raised was about the catch, photo, release tournaments.
Right. Yeah. It would be nice if a lot of groups could do that, because I really think that would help fish survival, especially in the warmer months. But the only group I know that really does anything similar to that is the musky groups. but they have to do it because, at Kincaid, it's a 48-inch minimum. Technically, they're not allowed to possess anything smaller than that. So by the rule, they're supposed to catch it and immediately release it, but it's understood they can hold it long enough till someone comes and witnesses it, and then they throw it right back in the water. But I don't know of any of the other clubs.
Oh, so they have to have a separate second person witness.
They have to, I think someone else in the tournament has to come, or maybe they have somebody, the other person, they're fishing in their boat. I don't know how it works, but I know that they used to have a witness come and look and actually measure the fish. But it would be really nice if other clubs could do that. But I know it's not a possibility that everyone's going to do it. But I'm 100% in support of it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I was watching something the other day about the evolution of the Professional Bass Angler Sportsman Society, and whenever they went from killing all the fish that they caught during tournaments to the live weigh-ins, it was just revolutionary. Nobody thought about doing that, and I couldn't help but think that hopefully we're in the precipice of another revolution there, even in the big boat world, because if you look at the fish mortality, especially like you said in the summertime, it's pretty significant. On a August day in Illinois, after dragging that fish around in a live well for 6 or 7 hours, then put it on a scale. So hopefully some other clubs might look at least experiment with it, because I think it really is help. That could be something that could help manage some resources at some lakes.
Yeah, the tough part with that is you have what's called delayed mortality, where you might have the weigh in, turn that fish loose, and it swims away fine, and it might swim away and die, and it might get far enough away that there's not any type of grouping of them where no one will ever, if you have 20 at the boat ramp, you kind of know what happened. But some of these fish will just can just swim away, and then you just won't know that they've passed, and they've passed. That's the tough part. And it's really something that's hard to study, because you'd have to get that fish after the weigh-in, put some kind of radio tag in it, which is stressful in itself after the fish has been in a lot, and then follow it. Well, if it died, did it die because I cut a hole in it and shoved a radio, a remote control radio beacon in it, or did it die because of the way it was handled? Or that just makes those types of studies really, really tough to do. And I've seen other studies where they'll take those fish, put them in a cage, and come check it. Well, I mean, that's stressful in itself too, that the fish is in a cage and it can't get back to where it wants to get, by the time you come and check it to see if it lived. And so we haven't had a lot of problems in terms of reported fish kills after. Now, I have had at least one in Cedar in the last 4 or 5 years. But we know we lose some fish to it, but that's another reason that we sample every year, is to keep an eye on it. And boy, I'm sure we lose some, but it's still, like I said, it's a tremendous fishery down there.
It is, absolutely. Shawn, I want to thank you for taking time. I know that you've been real good about coordinating with us, getting this scheduled, and you can just tell your passion for taking care of the resources that we value so much. We can tell that it's not just a job for you, it's a passion. Just want to, on behalf of all of our anglers in our kayak tournament series, thank you for what you do for all the lakes that you work on in Illinois.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a great career.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Feel free to post my phone number and email if people have questions or want the maps or anything like that. That's what I'm here for. Okay. So I'm not going to get mad if people call or email. That's part of the job. So.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you, sir. Be safe out there putting out those new pieces of habitat you've been building.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you'll see me dragging some trees in down. They're also I shouldn't bring this up, but they're talking about putting in a kayak specific launch down at Cedar. I don't know what that is going to entail. I don't know the time frame, but we'll see. We'll see if that comes into fruition anyway.
I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight on the podcast. There's tons of information. I'm going to watch this one myself 3 or 4 times to kind of get all the little nuggets that Shawn helped us with. So thank you for everyone for taking the time, and we'll see you in the next episode.